Thanks everyone for coming. I'm Debbie Brown, president of the Colorado Business Roundtable, and this is our annual State of the State event. So this is the annual event we do around the State of the State time. What makes our event a little bit different is we bring people up on stage to have a conversation with the governor around issues that are important to business leaders and academic leaders, community leaders here in Colorado. This year we picked a theme of affordability, community safety, and prosperity, because when we met with our partners, this rose to the top and of other issues of being really important to them, not only in how they view their business, but how they need to make sure their employees are safe, their customers are safe, and how we want to lean in on issues here in Colorado. I'd invite you to go ahead and start on your salads. Feel free to go ahead and eat, because then we'll just keep serving food as we go. So feel free to keep enjoying your lunch. A little bit about Colorado Business Roundtable. Colorado Business Roundtable leverages the expertise and experience of some of Colorado's leading companies from academia, business, community, and government, with a long-term global lens, and come together and find solutions that make our economy stronger and improve the quality of life of all Coloradans. Many of our partners and business leaders are in the room today. They come from diverse viewpoints, have different business verticals represented, but they're united around that commitment that a strong Colorado is better for all. Many of you may have heard of the Business Roundtable based in Washington, D.C. We're the state affiliate of that larger Business Roundtable that is the CEO coalition of America's largest companies. The National BRT CEO coalition provides 37 million American jobs and provides 24% of the U.S. GDP. Here in Colorado, our partners have $48 billion annually in Colorado revenue and $1.3 trillion in global revenue. And because we believe in the concept of profits and purpose, we think they go hand in hand, our covert partners also are big philanthropists. I like to say the value of a job is incredibly important depending on the economic environment. Sometimes it's even harder, as we saw during COVID. But many of our companies have deep ties to the community here in Colorado, and just in Colorado give $446 million in Colorado philanthropy, $2.6 billion in global philanthropy. So when we talk about business as a force for good, it's not only providing economic opportunity, but also giving back in our communities in which we live and play. When we are here today, we're going to talk about some complex issues, and many of you are employers that work on these issues daily, whether they're global, federal, state, or local. These are issues that are very complex and challenging, and we like to convene and collaborate thought leaders on these very difficult issues. If you look at our website, we recently hosted an issue around modernizing immigration as a workforce solution, for example. I can't think of a tougher issue right now for our country than really getting that right, making sure we have real solutions on immigration. We're also getting ready to talk about a view from the top. Many of you might have been at our View from the Top event that we had this fall, which talked about the sports aspect and what it means here in Colorado. And that was a lot of fun. Looking ahead, I want to let you know one event that we have coming up in February is an issue that we're working on called the Good Jobs Principles, coming out of Washington, D.C., with the Department of Labor, Department of Commerce. We've got thought leaders in the room from D.C. and also here in Colorado that are going to help give you more information about that coming down. Who decides what a good job is and how this might impact your ability to grow your business here in Colorado. I want to thank some of the elected leaders in the room before I get too far who have come, especially Mayor Piko, who's going to be on our panel today. And I know that she has a lot of city council from the city of Centennial here as well. We've got Mayor George Lance, I think, in attendance as well. And several commissioners. Abe is here from Douglas County, Abe Layden. And especially want to give a shout out to the new mayor of Arvada, Lauren Simpson. Where are you, Lauren? All right, great. Thanks, Lauren. And we've got some other representatives from our congressional offices, too. If you're an elected leader, we want to thank you for being part of our collaboration today. Thank you for being here. With Colorado Business Roundtable, we do have a shared vision of a prosperous Colorado, and this has united our members and partners under the belief that business is a force for good. We're thankful that so many employers have chosen to unite with us in this mission through Colorado Business Roundtable. Next, I'd like to introduce Kelly Caulfield, the Executive Director of Common Sense Institute. She's going to help frame our event today. Common Sense Institute believes sound fiscal and economic research is essential to uphold Colorado's economic vitality, future, and individual opportunity. We've been working with CSI for many years because, like CSI says, they provide valuable data and research that helps with decision making. So please join me in welcoming Kelly Caulfield.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Debbie. My name is Kelly Caulfield, and I'm the Executive Director of the Common Sense Institute. And for those who don't know us, Common Sense Institute is a nonprofit, nonpartisan research organization dedicated to the protection and the promotion of Colorado's economy. We focus on the facts, no spin. Can we just all agree on some facts? We think that's important. And last year was busy. We issued over 85 reports. That's a 60% increase over the year before. And the way we do that is with an amazing group of bipartisan policy fellows. And we're up to 12 now. I'm going to talk about more of them in a moment. But just yesterday, we were so excited to announce that Kelly Bruff is the newest Common Sense Policy Fellow. She'll be focused on urban development, transportation, and infrastructure issues. So her first report should be out this spring. So we can't wait to hear more from Kelly. I think coming out of the elections last fall, we can all agree that Colorado is united behind being more affordable, more prosperous, and a safer place for ourselves and for our families. And just last month, you can go to the next slide, CSI unveiled, for the first time, a free enterprise competitiveness index. And this is our barometer. This helps us rate Colorado compared to other states and the District of Columbia in terms of economic performance. So what's the bottom line? In 2023, Colorado ranked 8th relative to the 50 states. And while this might sound positive, it's important to know that our rank has been slipping. We are down, actually, since 2017, and it has declined 7 spots from 1st to 8th over the last 7 years. So what's driving this decline? Next slide, please. We examined 8 policy areas. I sat down at the table and someone asked, what does Common Sense focus on? And I'm like, every single issue important to the Colorado economy. Crime, education, water, energy, tax, you name it. And we have an index for all of these issues. We're not just plucking it out of thin air of how we think the state is doing. We're looking at numbers, we're looking at data. So we assigned a rating based on those metrics of how the state is performing. And as you can see, there are 2 areas that are really bringing us down, and they're going to be some of the key topics discussed today. So again, so happy to be here. Next slide, please. The first area I wanted to touch on briefly was public safety. Please, I encourage you to go to our Common Sense Institute co.org website. There will also be a QR code on the screen where you can see the great work being done by our bipartisan policy fellows. Chief Paul Pazin, the former Denver police chief, has been an excellent addition. And then we have 2 amazing former prosecutors. We have one here today who are our Owens Early Criminal Justice Fellows, and that's George Brockler and Mitch Morrissey. I would love for Mitch to stand. Our criminal justice fellows, really led by Mitch, they have had an unparalleled wealth of knowledge and real-world experience, and nobody has done more to elevate this issue in our state. Our new public safety index shows that the crime rate ranking fell. Our state's getting worse, from 20th back in 2011 to 37th in 2023. This is because of high crime rates, and the number of police per resident has declined. However, there may be some good news. Thanks to the fellows' research, legislation has been passed in the last 18 months to address auto theft, to address fentanyl, and retail theft. But we know that this takes some time to see impact. New research will be out soon that our fellows have been leading around additional transparency around prosecution rates, disaggregated by judicial districts, so that the public can have better understanding and confidence in the system and give clearer insights into where policy actions may be needed. In terms of the second issue, it's housing, and I really applaud our governor. Governor Polis has truly been a leader for housing in our state. The shout out here goes to Peter Lafari. We call him our #1 disruptor for housing policy in the state. And if you don't believe me, just read the Denver Post editorial from a few weeks ago saying that we need more condos in this state to help with our desperate lack of housing options in Colorado. Colorado ranks 51st nationally in terms of housing competitiveness. This is really drawing us down as a state, and it has to be addressed. The outlook is so negative because there have been no significant changes or reforms to unlock housing supply in areas of land use, permitting, streamlining of building codes, or addressing construction liability. Peter's latest report will come out this week. It'll be a fresh permitting data analysis across all of our largest jurisdictions on what does the gap look like and how can we identify solutions fast. Thank you again, Debbie, for inviting me today to share some of our data. You can see this QR code right beside Peter's face. Please click on that, or again, just go to commonsenseinstituteco.org to read all of our resources. Thank you again, and now I'll hand it off to the next presenter, Dave Schunk. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kelly. That was great. Good morning. My name is Dave Schunk. I'm president and CEO of Volunteers of America, Colorado, and we are a faith-based nonprofit serving people in need in 42 locations throughout Colorado. Since 1896, and I was not there then, but since 1896, it may look like I was there, we have been a leading provider of shelter, housing, nutrition and hunger services, volunteer engagement, and a wide variety of community and individual programming for seniors, veterans, those experiencing homelessness, justice-involved individuals, at-risk families, and youth. Okay, now with that out of the way, let's get down to business. I'm honored to also be the chair of the Colorado Business Roundtable. Just on behalf of the Roundtable, we say thank you and welcome for being here today. And as a show of hands, I'd love to hear or see how many Roundtable board members are here today. If you'd raise your hand, that is great. Fantastic. Thank you to the board for being here, and thank you to all of you for spending your time with us. We're grateful for that. The Colorado Business Roundtable leverages the expertise and the experience of more than 65 CEOs and senior executives from Colorado's largest and leading employers, representing academia, business, community, and the government. And one of the main reasons that I'm involved in the Colorado Business Roundtable is the belief in the value of a job to create dignity, opportunity, and financial security for individuals and families. Sound public policy decisions that promote job creation, a robust and thriving economy, and ultimately prosperity for all are so important, even for nonprofits like mine. You know, maybe perhaps for all nonprofits, it's important. You see, history has proven time and again that when businesses prosper, communities prosper. And when communities prosper, individuals flourish. Prosperity unlocks charity, generosity, and goodness. And over many years in my travels throughout the United States in this profession, in what we do, serving others in need, I have seen that Coloradoans are one of the most, if not the most, charitable and generous populations in the nation, period. It is amazing. And that is one of the reasons that the Roundtable is so important and vital to Colorado. And that is why we say at the Colorado Business Roundtable, indeed, business is a force for good. To conclude, let me just briefly highlight some of the many activities that we presented at the roundtable in this last year. We had 3 signature events that served as a platform to disseminate expert insights and thought leadership on critical business issues. We had 2 policy roundtables focused on improving the business climate in Colorado. We just saw some of that from Kelly. We had 18 exclusive partner briefings that empowered Colorado Business Roundtable members with the facts and information they need to be a strong presence in their respective community. We had 23 podcast interviews that amplified the voice of business throughout Colorado, and we had 4 wonderful media partners that were engaged to increase the reach and the impact of the roundtable. We also did release 4 videos in the Voices of Business video series featuring 30 thought leaders from business, community, academia, and government. So we were busy in 2023, and 2024 looks to be even busier. So we would welcome you to join us to ensure that our vision for a prosperous Colorado for all becomes and remains a reality. And if I can tell you more about the Colorado Business Roundtable and why you should consider joining, I would welcome the opportunity. So together, we are engaging in the future by ensuring that employers have not just a voice, but a seat at the table when decisions are made and policy is shaped. So please enjoy your meal and the company that you're with, and we'll get the program resumed here shortly. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. As we mentioned, the theme for this event that we're having is around community safety, affordability, and prosperity. These are top-of-mind issues that are also on the minds of not only people in business, but individuals here in our community. For Colorado Business Roundtable, these were identified to be some of the top issues top of mind for our partners. So let's engage and discuss. As we talked about, this is an event where there's a nice interactivity and some follow-up questions from folks that we've invited to be on our panel today. And it's okay to disagree better. The governor even started that forum about disagreeing better and having collaboration and the competition of ideas on some of these important issues. So before I introduce the governor to come up, I'd like to go ahead and bring our panel up as well, and then we'll be able to jump right into the dialogue. So when I introduce the panelists, come on up. Feel free to all come up at the same time, and I'll introduce you. But we're excited today to introduce Kim McHugh, a second generation driller who grew up in the industry, oversees Chevron's exploration and production activities in the Colorado DJ Basin, and on the Western Slope as the Vice President, Rockies Business Unit. Kim's career includes various management roles in field operations, engineering, and global performance at Chevron, BP, and ARCO, and she's worked in the Gulf of Mexico, Thailand, and U.S. onshore. And thank you, Kim, to all your folks who kept us warm this last polar vortex cycle. We're really appreciative to our oil and natural gas industry. Thanks, Kim. Next up, you've seen him already on the stage before. I want to welcome Dave Schunk. Dave serves as the president and CEO of Volunteers of America Colorado, a large faith-based nonprofit serving people in need in 42 locations throughout Colorado. Since 1896, VOA Colorado has been a leading provider of shelter, housing, nutrition, hunger services, volunteer engagement, and a wide variety of community and individual programming for seniors, veterans, those experiencing homelessness, justice-involved individuals, at-risk families, and youth. Prior to his nonprofit leadership, Dave served in a variety of C-level and senior management positions for large for-profit companies and founded and grew several small business ventures. Welcome again, Dave. Stephanie Piko was elected to serve as the mayor of Centennial in 2017 after serving for 6 years as a member of the city council. She served for 5 years on the board of National League of Cities and is involved with many state, regional, and local boards, such as Metro Mayor's Caucus, Mile High Flood District, Denver South, and the Colorado Business Roundtable. And she happens to be my favorite mayor because I live in Centennial. Oh, that's probably the best applause I've had all day. That's exciting. Next, excited to introduce Phil Washington as the CEO of the Denver International Airport. Phil Washington oversees the world's third busiest airport by passengers, an annual economic impact of $36.4 billion, 37,000 total badged employees with 25 air carriers and a total of 185 concessions. Phil set forth a vision for Denver International Airport, Vision 100, that will prepare the airport to accommodate 100 million passengers, a 30% increase in passengers by 2030. Prior to taking the helm at DIA, Phil held numerous high-level leadership positions within the transportation industry. Welcome, Phil. Thank you. And our moderator today, Luigi Del Puerto. He's the editor of the Denver Gazette. Luigi, there you are. A veteran political reporter and award-winning journalist, Luigi Del Puerto serves as editor of the Denver Gazette and Colorado Politics. He was previously the publisher and editor of Arizona Capital Times, a Phoenix-based media company that covers public policy and politics. A native of the Philippines, Del Puerto cut his journalistic teeth covering crime in the streets of Manila and pursued stories about labor, elections, and national security. So I would think covering Colorado might be a little easier than the streets of Manila, but welcome, Luigi. And our guest of honor is really our governor. We want to thank him so much for doing this event with us every year, taking the time to give some remarks about his economic priorities that affect business and our economy, and then taking some questions from some of these leaders here in Colorado about those specific priorities. And we welcome the dialogue about these issues because they are complex, and when we come together, I believe we come up with even better solutions than we would apart. Many of you know Governor Jared Polis. He's an entrepreneur, an education leader, and a public servant. After launching several successful companies, Governor Polis committed himself to make sure other Coloradans had the opportunity to pursue their dreams as well. And he founded schools for at-risk students and new immigrants and started nonprofits to serve veterans. So help me welcome Governor Jared Polis.
Thank you, Debbie, for the kind introduction. It's great to be here. I appreciate the work of the Business Roundtable in facilitating these very important conversations. In just 2 years, in 2026, our state will turn 150 years old, sesquicentennial. And it's an important reflection point. In fact, later today, I'll be rolling out some of the initial phases of our administration's planning for that event. We also have a sesquicentennial commission that's working on this. We want this to be a major statewide celebration of who we are and who we aspire to be. And it's really a pivotal moment in many ways for Colorado as we look at the future. Who do we want to be at 150? What do we want our second 150 years to be like? And you know, it's an important call for all of us to really rise to the occasion to build the state that we want to be. And as business leaders, you understand that we need to roll up our sleeves and get things done. As someone who started several businesses and brought that experience to public service, I know that we can tackle the greatest challenges Colorado has to face and set us on the right path really over the next couple of years. So when we reflect, we can say we are making Colorado more affordable, better business climate, more livable for our next 150 years. And I know as we move into this new year, one of the biggest challenges we face as a state, the business community faces, families face, is the high cost of housing. And that is impeding our ability to attract, recruit, retain the people we need to power the private sector, adds more traffic and time lost on the roads. In fact, the average Coloradan spends about 52 hours a year stuck in traffic. That's more than an entire work week. Average commuting costs $1,800. Rent and mortgage, substantial increases, of course, in the Denver metro area, but also many other areas of their state. And I know that many companies across our state are having a difficult time recruiting and retaining the talent they need because of the high cost of housing. And at a certain level, it's a simple question. It's like anything in economics, it's a function of supply and demand. And demand is high. That's wonderful. Colorado's a great place to live. Everybody wants to be here. But supply has been many artificial constraints and limitations. And we look forward to continuing the work to create more housing now for rent, for purchase, at all price levels, market, affordable, in job centers, along transit corridors where people can get where they want to go conveniently, easily, at low cost. Last year, we took an important step by signing a bill that banned growth caps, that actually outlawed new housing in communities. And this year, we look forward to doing a lot more to lead the way. The state's putting our skin in the game. I did an executive order to remove bureaucratic barriers and cut through red tape, reducing turnaround time for the subset of housing that the state assists through the Division of Housing or Department of Local Affairs, generally housing the more affordable end, to 90 days. We want our friends in local government to also increase their processing time, new financing strategies, transit-oriented development, tackling liability costs for multifamily condo construction, reducing the cost of insurance. These are all important factors in the cost of living that is an existential threat to our continued success in the business community. We simply need to be able to make sure that people can afford to live in communities near jobs and be able to support that for Colorado's second 150 years. When it comes down to is creating a Colorado where people can live more affordably, with greater livability, more sustainability. That often means access to more reliable transportation options, buses, bikes, walkable neighborhoods. Can save families money. A family of four might want to have one car instead of two, as an example. If they're able to get more places where they want to go easier. And housing and transit truly go hand in hand, and transit-oriented connected neighborhoods can provide a really strong future for our state, less time caught stuck in traffic, better air quality. And investing in passenger rail is another big priority, possible because of the once-in-a-lifetime opportunities with federal funding under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. The Fast Track's promise of train service from Union Station to Boulder, Longmont, and then on to Loveland and Fort Collins is a goal that we want to act to make a reality sooner rather than later. Mountain Rail, Winter Park, Steamboat, West Jeffco, also an exciting opportunity for connectivity for residents, as well as Phil, for tourists to our state, connecting from DIA. We especially want to get those Texan and California drivers off our roads in winter. So, and of course, another important issue and the focus of our work is improving public safety across the state of Colorado. Nothing is more important or fundamental to healthy communities than being safe in your home, walking to the store at night, walking through the park. 2 years ago, we set the goal of making Colorado one of the 10 safest states in the country. By 2027, we're really doubling down on that work, already delivering some results. Auto vehicle theft, one of the areas we focused on the last 2 years, down 24% year over year. Violent crimes down. And by investing in what we know works, we can continue to crack down on auto theft, property crime, assaults, and boost community-led efforts to safer Colorado. These initiatives are mostly funding from the state. Historically, law enforcement has been funded entirely locally. Police, sheriff's departments, prosecutors. We are now, for the first time, starting 2 years ago, the state is helping augment that level for recruitment and retention of law enforcement personnel, community diversion programs. We are funding specific prosecutors to prosecute auto theft. And this year we are working on, with the U.S. Attorney General, Cole Finnegan, on supporting additional prosecutors for serious gun crimes like gun running and gun smuggling and illegal guns that in the hands of gangs. And so we're continuing that work as well to make Colorado safer. As part of our vision for Colorado at 150 and beyond, we also want to continue to be a leader in workforce development, another area of strong partnership with business sector. And that includes everything from opportunities to learn while you earn and apprenticeships, saving people money on education and training, leading to a stronger Colorado businesses and a stronger economy. Through Colorado Now, we are encouraging breaking down of barriers and partnerships between businesses and community colleges and colleges to create new training pathways to further blur the line between K-12 and higher education and job training, dual and concurrent enrollment, working to make sure that kids are graduating high school with the skills they need to fill one of the open positions you have and earn a good living, empower the growth of the private sector. So many examples of this across the state. Zavaro, an IT company, is working with Ellicott High School to develop a scalable model for high school students to access a career path in cybersecurity. Western College of Construction is expanding the number of construction apprenticeships where people can earn while they learn and get credentialed, with an emphasis on serving diverse populations and improving the completion rate. And with dozens of initiatives like this, many of which the state will be supporting and funding or is supporting and funding, including free community college for a number of in-demand fields like EMT, law enforcement, construction, trades, firefighting, we know that we can help bridge the gap. There's 1.8 unemployed Coloradans, 1.8 job openings for every unemployed Coloradan, more job openings. But every unemployed Coloradan doesn't necessarily have the right skills to match with one of the 1.8 jobs. So how do we make sure that we can connect that and make sure that the very small number of unemployed Coloradans are able to get the upgrades or certification or skills they need to help fill the larger number of vacant positions that allow them to support themselves with dignity and power our future growth. So we have a lot of work in the 2 years ahead as we approach our 150th anniversary, but I'm optimistic we can work together to deliver real results to make Colorado an even more amazing place. And as business leaders, as community leaders, your voices are a key part of these conversations. I'm excited to have the dialogue with some of your members, leaders here today, and look forward to continuing these important conversations moving forward. Thank you. You want me to sit down there? Or do you want me to stand or sit? Which one? Okay, good.
Thank you, Governor. 150 years in 2 years, that's incredible. I can't help but think about what it must have been like 150 years ago, what it was like 200 years ago, and how much progress we have made as a species. Think about the average person and all the being the opportunity or maybe even the luck to be born in this time, in this place, is incredible. And I can't help but think how wonderful it is for our state to be celebrating 150 years. Just one really quick metric. There are conflicts in many parts of the world, but it is a much more peaceful world than what it was compared to the last century, for example. It's incredibly important for our political leaders, state leaders, to go and set the tone for the state, because that provides the business community, for example, some certainty, vision, some sense of clarity as to what we're doing and where they're going. And it's just as important for our state leaders to hear from the folks that are here on the panel this morning. So thank you again for being here. Okay, let's get right to it. We got a couple questions for you, Governor. Let's start with Dave.
You bet. Governor, thank you for being here today. It's great to be able to ask you these questions. This one is on affordability. You touched on it in your opening remarks. But for example, Volunteers of America Colorado served over 100,000 people in need last year in the areas of food and housing, shelter, other services, and affordability is a big issue. This isn't just a Colorado problem. The cost of living and the cost of doing business is rapidly growing, and we are seeing a significant increase just in the number of Coloradoans we serve and that use our services like our food banks and our Meals on Wheels. And then just recently, according to CNBC, Colorado is now ranked 38th in the cost of doing business. What can be done from a policy standpoint to make Colorado more affordable? And again, you touched on it. I know you're doing a lot of things. And how can we be a part of that?
So you look at how costs are experienced. Number one cost is housing in our state and for families, for everybody. Number two is usually health care for people. But you know, we're focused on costs across the board, and it's a challenging situation. But we have a lot of work on healthcare, importing prescription drugs, and negotiating for better prescription drug rates, working with hospitals to have more transparency and lower rates. Housing is going to be the big one of focus because that's the one that's seen the biggest run-up, the biggest challenge for, of course, individuals seeking housing, but also for businesses. And we're really focused on a multifaceted, comprehensive agenda to reduce housing costs. I mean, rooted in increasing supply, which the supply constraints have fundamentally created this issue, coupled with, of course, the high demand that we have for housing.
Perfect. Kim?
So since we're talking about affordability, shouldn't the legislature do a better job of understanding the policy changes and the impact to the consumer, and then provide information to the consumer before they pass legislation?
Well, I'm not sure on that second part how they could, while they're in the process of contemplating legislation, provide information to consumers. But I think that's where your role is so important. So, I mean, the legislature is a public, they meet publicly. And so it's important for, and they don't have a lot of in-house resources for analysis. I mean, each member might have half a staff person or something like that. So if you, Business Roundtable and others, are able to do, cost-benefit analysis or there's the opportunity in the forum to present that to the legislators and to the general public during the process as well. That's going to be an important part of making sure if there are ideas that they have that would increase costs, that you can highlight those and sort of figure out what is wrong or what needs to be changed so that it can reduce costs instead of increase costs.
Yeah, I think, Governor, just a really quick follow-up on that one. There had been several legislation over the past number of years in which the legislature would pass mandates, for example, on the energy front, and that would cost businesses, for example, billions of dollars over a certain amount of time. So just to kind of recast the question, do you think the legislature understands when they're passing this, it has a real impact on businesses?
Well, I think that's what your role is, to show that with data. Again, they don't have a lot of in-house resources, so they rely on good data from bona fide, objective sources to make their decisions, and it's important that you can help provide that during the process, so that I think they're aligned with the goal of reducing costs. I don't doubt that. Republicans, Democrats, I mean, they all seem to be pretty focused on this. They hear from their constituents, cost. And obviously the biggest part of that is national inflation. We can't address that here, but costs have gone up a lot. Supply chain issues, war in Ukraine, whatever those factors are that are a national monetary policy at the Fed. I mean, a lot of things that are not in our control. But then we have to focus on the things that are under our influence or control here. And it's obviously not monetary or trade policy, but it is other cost drivers that we can look at again, I think Republicans and Democrats generally agree that they want to reduce costs, and we just have to show information about how they can more effectively do that.
What I'm hearing is that to the business community, go reach out to the governor's office, and he'll make sure he'll veto the bills you want vetoed.
Well, I think it's more with the legislative process. As I said, I hope that we can get some good bills that reduce costs. That would be the goal, and your involvement will be critical. But if you get bills to me that reduce costs, you can certainly be assured I'm going to sign them.
Thank you. Mayor?
So I'm going to touch on property tax a bit, but so I believe there's broad support for the senior homestead exemption, as you stated in your State of the State address, and I'd hope that we can get that passed with bipartisan support in the legislature. But beyond that, with the failure of HH at the ballot box and the special sessions work to provide temporary tax relief, along with the creation of the property tax task force, it appears that the task force is really tasked with focusing on the consequences of the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment, which has kind of been left unaddressed in recent years. So with the task force primarily focusing on residential property tax solutions, how do you see us addressing the commercial property tax issues, especially with the anticipated decline in commercial property values?
Well, I certainly hope the commission is, certainly in their charge, they're also looking at commercial property tax. That's in their scope and what we want them to do. I've always said there's kind of three things we need to do for property taxes post-Gallagher. One is the short-term relief piece, and that piece can and was done legislatively. Second is what is the kind of cap or mechanism going forward to make sure that property taxes don't go up at a rate above people's incomes or beyond inflation, whatever it is. And the third is addressing what I assume is an unintended consequence of Gallagher, which is the fact that we have one of the biggest deltas between the commercial and the residential rate in the country. So our commercial rate is too high. It's not so much that our residential rate is too high. We're actually 49th, maybe after all this we'll be 48th. We do need a reasonable cap, but it's quite low. Commercial is not low. So how do we reduce that? Obviously Prop HH would have reduced that substantially. I don't know if we can ever get something that reduces it at the same level as HH, but obviously we're for any commercial property tax reduction.
Thank you. Phil?
Great to see you, Governor, and thank you for your leadership. I'm going to surprisingly ask you about transportation. You mentioned your moonshot goal in your state of the state address, and you mentioned that it was adding high-speed rail, front-range rail in Colorado, especially with the significant bipartisan infrastructure bill dollars as well. How do you see the convergence of infrastructure regarding rail and other modes of transportation? And other than a stop at DIA, what does it look like for Colorado and the region?
Yeah, so this, again, as you indicated, wouldn't really be possible without the enormous federal investment. We also have a Front Range Rail District. So we're really committed to Front Range Passenger Rail, that's Pueblo to Fort Collins, and what that means for convenience and ease of access and reducing traffic is key. The first piece of this will be the kind of long overdue piece, the piece that's been on the books the longest. That's the Northwest Rail, the Fast Tracks piece. Then Mountain Rail is also on a fairly aggressive time frame. We obviously, as you know, have a very seasonal ski train to Winter Park, but this would be more about regular year-round service, faster, easier, including West Jeffco, Winter Park, Steamboat, Rollinsville, Eldora, getting some of that traffic off the roads as well. So these are areas that we really want to work with the legislature to do the state piece. I mean, again, federal, there's a district, but of course there's a state piece as well, and we look forward to working with legislators this session to make sure that the stars can align to get this work done sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Shifting just a little bit into the issue of prosperity. Kim, I believe you have a question for the governor.
Yeah, thank you. So you mentioned it in your State of the State address, and our polling shows the same thing, like 2/3 of Coloradans' biggest concern is cost of living. And that impacts our ability to recruit and retain talent and the well-being of the communities where we live. Our employees are engaged in the education and shop and just live their lives. And the oil and gas sector wants to help on these issues of affordability and prosperity. And I did like your point in your State of the Address that talked about disagree better. So what I want to ask is, how can we help?
Well, really, every sector like yours, your employees need a place to live, that they can afford to live. And we would all rather that place is closer to the job centers and job sites, because that means better quality of life for your worker, more sustainable, better retention, also less time wasted on commutes. So that's what we need to accomplish, and we look forward to working with the business community to really support a comprehensive housing effort. And so it's not one bill, it's a number of bills that fundamentally will hopefully allow more homes to be built, especially near job centers and on transit routes, so people can live more affordably close to where the jobs are. And it's important from the oil and gas industry perspective. Where jobs are, yes, you have jobs in Denver and Greeley, but where jobs are also means many areas across eastern Colorado. And so whether it's temporary, medium-term, long-term living, those are all part of that discussion as well, just as it would be, for instance, for our seasonal resort workers in western Colorado, our ag workers in eastern Colorado, and others who might have a place of employment other than our major urban centers.
Governor, a quick follow-up question. You mentioned the importance of housing, of course. Last year, the legislation that you championed didn't land on your desk. This year, is it going to land on your desk?
Well, it's not any one bill, it's a number of them. I think the main thing we heard is that last year, I think many of you, I don't remember whether BRT formally supported it or not, but the chamber and many business community did. It was called Bill 213. It didn't go far enough. It didn't really solve the whole housing issue. So I think you're going to see a much more comprehensive, bolder, bigger effort, because the problem's only gotten worse. And obviously failure to act, housing is just going to become less and less expensive, more and more expensive in our state, and it's going to destroy our quality of life. And of course, it's already damaging the business sector.
Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, need this. This might help. Governor, you've been a successful businessman, and I think over the years that you've been governor, we've had a good business environment here. It's been ranked very high, but it is declining. And this one is just on the regulation issue. Recently, a study of 156 Colorado business leaders stated that the regulatory environment was near the top or at the top of their greatest concerns. Just from your experience, how can the business leaders in this room today work with you and your departments and the legislature to make Colorado back to the top of the business-friendly environment?
Yeah, I mean, obviously some of this is federal, so I'm not sure if they're thinking perhaps EPA stuff, some of which we have to administer. We certainly push back against, but obviously, at least for the ozone non-attainment area, there's a lot of federal considerations. But we're certainly very open to and supportive of any efforts to streamline the state side of the regulation. And I think the main entity there would probably be CDPHE. So if there's bills or ideas you have about improving processing time or reducing the need for costly applications or processes, we're very supportive of that.
Just a quick follow-up, if I may. I think it was in August, you did, and you mentioned it in your opening comments, issue the executive order to streamline that. What's your feedback on that? Has that been working from your side?
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly trying. I mean, there's many, turnaround time is something we've been focused on. So like the Energy Management and Carbon Sequestration Commission, formerly, COGCC, that's one example. But everywhere, applications were just taking too long. And part of that was perhaps that there were certain parts that were understaffed, but we really want to make sure that we can turn stuff around quickly so it can be built quickly. I mean, permitting is a perfect example, whether it's for housing, whether it's for renewable energy, whatever it's for, it should be very quick and fast, and whatever criteria there are federally and local, I mean, they're valid to look at, but they should do it in 60 days rather than a year and a half. Thank you.
Governor, I'm sure that in this room there's a lot of proposals and bill ideas, and if they do have those, I'm sure they do have those, who would you, which legislator do you think they should approach so that you and that legislator can just work it out?
Well, probably the legislator that represents your area where your jobs are. I mean, they're going to be the most responsive. So if you have 1,000 jobs in a member's district, you should have hopefully had your state representative and state senator over already to visit you. If not, you better do that. But there'd be no reason you shouldn't have that strong relation. Doesn't mean all your employees live in their district, but they will know that the jobs are in their district, and they will know that a third or half the employees live in their district. So start with your representative. Now, if you have several sites, you probably have several to do, but I really hope that all of you have had your representative in your center to your place of business. And that work is very important. I mean, after that, you can go to who might be a kind of content area expert in the legislature on whatever particular idea you have, and that requires a little more research, but, there's members who know more about tax policy, there's members who know more about transit, there's members who know more about healthcare, and so there are some content area leaders that you can go to as well, but certainly start with yours.
Thank you. Mayor?
Great. So again, affordability of housing and construction defects. So condominiums and townhomes are a big piece of what we consider the missing middle in our housing market. They are often the first step to home ownership and can start an individual's journey towards wealth creation. But in Colorado, due to construction defects legislation, developers have been forced to abandon this segment of the market due to the prohibitive costs of insuring their product. During your State of the State legislative address, you stated that you were willing to tackle liability costs for multifamily condominiums. You also proclaimed your support for more transit-oriented neighborhoods. If construction defects is not addressed prior to providing development incentives for transit-oriented communities, how will you ensure that the entirety of the transit-oriented development does not simply become a taxpayer-subsidized corporate-owned apartments that limit an individual's ability to participate in home ownership?
Yeah, and we love home ownership, wealth building, and equity. Doesn't mean there's not a place for rentals. Obviously, there are. Not against more rental inventory. We need it. But obviously, prefer from a social good perspective the opportunity to own a home, condo, and obviously what's lacking across the metro area in particular are what we might call starter homes, meaning, or condos, units that you can purchase, $200,000, $300,000. They're just not around anymore. Average, I think, is $600,000 in Denver metro area. Very hard to find anything below $450,000. And I think close to impossible to find something at $250, which for many is going to be their first ability to buy a home with a down payment and income early in their career. So we need more inventory across the board, and obviously we do want those ownership opportunities, not just in transit-oriented developments, but across the board. So we did call for reform in our speech, and I would add that's part of what we need to do. There is no silver bullet, right? So again, the two go hand in hand, but if you're going to do, we're going to be able to have more condos and reduce the cost of condo construction, you also need to make sure we address this piece about allowing condos to be built on transit-oriented corridors, because the two are going together. So yeah, we hope that you're able to deliver that as part of a multi-pronged package to reduce the cost of housing. And I would say it's insurance more generally as well. I mean, we're also very concerned about fire insurance, so not just construction defects insurance, but fire, general homeowners insurance. These have also seen increases significantly above the rate of inflation that have made housing less affordable in our state.
Governor,
Can I ask
go
a follow-up
ahead.
real quick? So would there be any suggestions on what you could do to approach the insurance market to attract them to come back to Colorado, to make sure that these projects don't have to wait a couple of years for the insurance industry to catch up with our legislation?
Well, that's a good question. Hopefully, if you have members from the insurance side, maybe they can help us answer that. So I'm sure you do. Who's in the insurance industry here? I mean, there must be somebody from insurance.
If you're from the insurance industry, don't raise your
I
hand.
don't know. How'd you get in It's a good opportunity for future growth of the business roundtable. Debbie, you hear that? You can go out and recruit some. But yeah, I mean, we would love to hear ideas about, I don't know how you can accelerate that, but obviously we do need to make some changes. But the more we can accelerate new entrants to the market, the better. On the fire side, I think what we really need to figure out is how we can do better community-level mitigation to reduce rates. I mean, it's somewhat simple. If we reduce risks, rates come down. So how do we do better defense perimeters, control burns, taking down fuel in a way that can move the bar on reducing costs for everybody?
Thank you. Phil?
Yes, Governor. Denver International Airport.
I've heard of it.
Yes, yes. We just announced our inaugural Environmental, Social, and Governance, or ESG, report. How can this work impact what the state of Colorado is doing, as well as nationally and globally? And just an add-on to that question, specifically on EV transition, the transition to EV, as we think about infrastructure, as we think about rail on the Front Range as well.
Well, congratulations. I'll need to read your report, so I'll look forward to reading it. I think this can be a competitive advantage for DIA. I mean, you look at major carriers, and one of ours, United as an example, has very aggressive climate goals as an organization, and to the extent that Denver is ahead of the curve on tarmac EVs and transit in and out, and I think that can help favor DIA for additional routes if we can show that increased efficiency to the major carriers, all of which weigh climate considerations to a certain degree. I think, as I said, our United has a particularly aggressive plan. Southwest has a plan. Congrats on landing Breeze Airlines, excited about that. So again, I think that if we can model that out, in some ways it's not too different than the oil and gas industry. I think what the oil and gas industry is showing is in Colorado they're producing in a more climate efficient manner than other states. And so I think that's being factored into pricing, maybe not fully yet, but it will. Why? Because the demand side of oil and gas, of air travel, many have aggressive climate goals. The companies do. Big companies, Amazon, Google, very ambitious, but almost many companies have goals. And so to the extent that the sourcing of their fuel, air travel, can help them meet their goals, I think that is a competitive advantage for our state.
Thank you. Kim?
So Governor, thanks for answering these questions. I really do appreciate it. But since you're really sometimes the last check on legislative overreach, I'm kind of wondering, how willing are you to use the veto pen this year when legislation could have big unforeseen negative impacts to consumers?
Well, I'm trusting you to stop all the bad bills. So I hopefully
hey, we're all in.
I
Let
hopefully
us
won't need
do
to veto a single bill, because you will be able to prevent any bad bills from reaching me. We do, when a bill passes, we read every bill, evaluate it. We usually have 30 days to do that during the mostly May, and so we evaluate every bill that passes. But again, I would encourage you to prevent bad bills from passing.
Yeah, I'm going to have a follow-up question, Governor, right? You're very good at ensuring that bills you don't like don't land on your desk. I've seen that, and I've only been here 2 years.
I don't know how good I am at that, but thank you for the kind words, Louis.
So what do you exactly tell them?
What's that?
What do you exactly tell the legislators whose bills you don't like?
Well, I like you and respect you as a person, but I don't. I mean, again, I think their hearts, everybody, Democrat, Republican, their heart's in the right place. They want to reduce costs. I mean, that's what their constituents are demanding. So I think to the extent that we can just sort of show them, yes, this reduces cost, or hey, currently this bill actually increases cost, but if you can fix this, it decreases cost. So it's more just math and objective data. I mean, it's not that anybody wants to increase costs. I don't think anybody in the legislature wants to do that.
I'd like to take a peek into your office one day and see the board with all the bills you don't like. Phil, you have a question for the governor.
Yeah, this is on generational wealth, Governor. Much of the discretionary grants that are coming out of the federal government has a tie to equity and generational wealth in underserved communities. DEN is at the forefront of looking to create generational wealth in underserved communities through infrastructure and jobs.
For your employees?
Employees and people that's not even working there, creating a career pathway in the infrastructure space, regardless of mode, aviation, transit, whatever it is. Can you talk a little bit about job creation, particularly through things like infrastructure and maybe high tech and things like that?
Yeah, lots of great jobs. And so it's really a matter of helping people get the skills they need for good paying jobs, which often, by the way, in this day and age does not mean a 4-year college degree, but it often means something. Like you don't just automatically have the ability to do it just because you graduated high school or dropped out of high school. So what is it? Is it a 12-week coding academy? Is it a 1-year program through community college? We moved the state to skills-based hiring. So we don't look at whether you have a college degree or not for nearly all of our positions now. I mean, obviously, if you want to be a CPA for the state, you have to have a CPA. If you want a JD, you have to have a JD. But I mean, for almost every position, we value the skills that people got, no matter how they got them. It could have been at a college, or it could have been in the U.S. military. It could have been as an entrepreneur and business owner. It could be as a homemaker. Right? Talk about somebody who's good at management. How about a homemaker who had 6 kids, right? I'd pick them every day over somebody who went to business school to manage people. So, I mean, this is what we're trying to do as a state to move forward with being able to attract and retain the people. And I know that many private sector folks are doing the same. When it comes to intergenerational wealth, I mean, to me, the biggest part of that is home ownership. That's how families experience wealth building. And the fact that we don't have homes on the market in the 200s and 300s is making that nearly impossible for people, because by the time you can afford a $600,000 home, you're actually already pretty well off. Not that we don't want people who can buy a $600,000 home to develop intergenerational wealth, we certainly do. But we want to open up that doorway to people who, because of their income level, can afford perhaps a down payment and monthly payments on a $250,000 home. Maybe they're going to buy a $600,000 home in 15 years, but they're going to build up the equity in that $250,000 home rather than it just going to rent every month.
Thank you. If you're a journalist, you're going to need about 20 years. Stephanie, I believe you have a question for the governor as well.
Sticking kind of on transit a little bit, that many of your priorities and the legislators' priorities require safe and reliable transit to be successful, including our safe light rail system. Businesses have relocated and invested in being near light rail stations and transit-oriented developments. The business community has worked with RTD and local jurisdictions to try and build consumer confidence and safety and in the reliability of the transit system. But we have Fortune 500 companies in Denver South Corridor whose employees have returned their transit passes back to their employer because they don't feel safe riding our transit system. So as pending legislative priorities continue to focus on the need for public transit as a keystone to successful housing, development, and environmental goals, what can you do as governor to ensure citizens' safety on and the reliability of our public transit system and light rail system?
I mean, first start with the data. I mean, transit is safer than driving yourself, full stop. So, I mean, if you're concerned about safety and just look at statistics, you are much safer across the board, whether light rail, even safer, passenger rail, but also buses, better safety record than individual drivers, largely due to training, lack of distractions. I mean, you know, on buses, they're trained to drive, and that's their job. Too many Coloradans are doing other things while they're driving. But of course, light rail, very, very safe. And passenger rail will be very, very safe, vastly superior to driving, especially in inclement weather. And that's important for all corridors in our state. I mean, we witnessed this enormous snowstorm the last few days. I took the ski train up to Winter Park the day before the weather hit. So Berthoud Pass was closed for several, it had to be, I mean, there's avalanches there, but we were still we were able to run the train in and out. I think it was delayed a couple hours one day, but I mean, compared to not even being able to get in and out on your own car. Now, public safety as a whole, so I mean, I think this you might also be referring to like, oh, is Union Station safe, that kind of thing. I think that's obviously Denver. They've stepped it up. I understand. Maybe you can tell us whether it's working. I need to go there. I haven't been there recently. But I mean, they are taking this very seriously. Mayor Mike Johnson takes this very seriously. We are, again, helping financially in the sense that we now have grants that local law enforcement is getting. But the enforcement piece is local. And then, of course, RTD has their own security as well, and part of the RTD reforms that we want to work with RTD on is making sure that from a public safety perspective, their stations, our people feel safe as well.
Is there anything additional that your office can do to assist RTD in being able to focus on the safety component of riding on the light rail?
Yeah, I mean, so when you say that, what exactly do you mean? I mean, I don't think as I said, it's much safer than driving. So, like, what are you hearing on light rail?
So, personally, I've heard of people who have been attacked by people on the light rail on the line, mothers who don't feel safe sending their kids downtown anymore on a light rail line because they don't feel the train is actually not as a physical safety part of crashes or anything, but more that the people that are on the light rail system that are allowed to ride, because a lot of the light rail approach, you don't have to have a ticket. There's not any kind of thing that blocks you from getting on a train at any given point in time. They haven't had the security personnel on trains where they're trying to increase it, but to make people feel that it's not that it's safe away from either the drug or fentanyl problem that's on the train and the homelessness problem that's on the train. They're using that as shelter.
Yeah, so kind of a broader reflection of things that are happening elsewhere. So yeah, I mean, certainly more on-train security would be great. I know that they don't always check everybody's pass all the time, but obviously they do check, and people do have to pay the fare or have a pass. And of course, that's not the solution to homelessness, is not transit. People should not be, the answer is, again, Mayor Johnson and others are working on housing and where are they going to. It's not, do you go on a bus and just ride it around all day. So I hope that's not happening much, but if it is, RTD needs to do a better job preventing that.
Phil, I believe you have a quick follow-up question.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. First of all, I want to thank you and the state for funding transit for 2 months last year, the free transit. That was fantastic. I ride transit almost every day, and not just because I had a connection to RTD.
So what's your experience with these problems that the mayor identified kind of with on transit?
Well, there is security on the train. I was just on there last night, and there's security on the train. I do agree that it's safe, and I do agree that it's safer than driving. But I think in terms of use, what we have tried to do, even at Denver International Airport right now, is encourage people to ride the A-line out to the airport. Because one, it's convenient. Two, it reduces congestion on Pena Boulevard that we are looking to improve right now. So, but thank you for the 2 months. I think the first time the state did this, it was 1 month, and last year was 2. My question is, in 2024, will it be 3?
Well, it's a good question. I think what we are actually working to do is we want to continue the 2 months. So we want to make, it's worked well, so we don't want to go backward. I mean, are we open to a discussion with legislators about 3? Absolutely. Everything in the world comes down to funding. But we saw there was initial success from this. It increased ridership by, I think, about 30%. No surprise that it did. And I think also it might have introduced people to transit during those months that are sticking around and realize the benefits afterwards. So we do want to continue that. We're absolutely open to expanding it. So in our budget, we continue it if we are open to the conversation about doing more.
Thank you. Dave?
Yeah, so I'm going to take a page out of Phil's book here, and it might surprise you, Governor, but we're not going to get off the stage without talking about homelessness. So I thought that would be good. In both urban and rural Colorado, homelessness has been and is currently one of the most significant issues of our time, and yet most of these issues fall on cities to determine strategy. We see local governments deploy different strategies to deal with homelessness, and now those strategies are being severely tested with the influx of immigrants, even as Denver Mayor Johnston recently stated, tested to the tipping point. And what can the state do to build the framework to work with local governments and nonprofits to better coordinate and learn from best practices? And I would, if you would, I know that recently, well, actually, you've been really proactive with the administration in terms of reaching a border security deal, and I thank you for your efforts there. But could you comment on that framework, both from the migrant issue and also homelessness overall?
Yeah, so you look at kind of what the state can and can't do. We don't have the legal authority, nor necessarily should we, to do what cities do. We don't have people to go in and do things. Cities can call us out for support roles, meaning if we want to use the National Guard, and we did during the extreme cold snap. So we operated several warming centers for anybody, so we're happy to do that. But so we're in a supportive role, meaning, and it's a challenging situation because we're in a supportive role kind of regardless of what strategy a city is doing, because we are supportive of all of our cities. I mean, whether it's Mayor Coffin, Mayor Johnson, there's a new mayor elect in Pueblo as of yesterday, Mayor Yemi, Mayor Southers before him. Whatever their strategy is, we always sit down, and I meet with our mayors regularly, and try to say, well, how can the state help? So, and usually the biggest thing we hear is housing, and that is what we are talking about. I mean, when we're talking about housing, it's everything. It's, of course, important for the business climate and to attract and retain people, but at the end of the day, there's a shortage of housing, and so areas that have lower housing costs have a direct correlation to less homelessness. It's kind of not rocket science there. So housing is one of those. And frankly, behavioral health support is the other that the state is scaling up on. So we are currently building in Aurora, and we operate one in Fort Lyons, kind of like a residential medium-term behavioral health and substance abuse recovery facility. So this is where, just like if you have friends or family who had means, they might have gone away for a couple months and hopefully had a good cure rate and came back from a substance abuse problem. We want to make sure that's available for the indigent. And so, and we do operate one, and it's very popular and very successful. I think it's like a 70% success rate. So we're going to add another one with a couple hundred beds where people can get sober and get the behavioral health support they need, and it links up to kind of link it up with jobs and housing at the end. And I think it's usually a couple month to no more than 6 month type program.
Just a quick comment, just to say thank you for mentioning behavioral health, Governor. You've been so strong in affordable housing, but often the noise level gets so loud there that we forget about, and funding is so much more difficult for behavioral, mental, and other recovery programs. So thank you for mentioning that. And any more you can do would be great.
Thank you. I think we have room for just one quick question. Kim?
So your administration has overseen a shift in oil and gas regulations, from the SB 181, putting public health and safety first, to groundbreaking methane rules and greenhouse gas emission reporting and control regulations. And we have made great strides in the oil and gas industry in the state of Colorado to meet these expectations. And personally, I think this should be a platform of your accomplishments. that will help more Coloradans understand just how far we've gone. My question is, when is Colorado pretty much going to shout from the rooftops the advancements that we've made around the environmental performance from oil and gas regulations? And I ask this because we can tell our own story. It does not mean as much until you and the government will support us in those advancements that we've made. So when can we see that?
There's a lot of work in progress. I give kind of the NOx emission as an example. So there's goals for 2030, which are achievable. That's only 6 years from now, and they are not necessarily easy to reach, but we think that the operators can reach them. They will reach them. I think they're working on that rulemaking, as you indicated. On the greenhouse gas reduction roadmap, oil and gas sector is overperforming, meaning they are delivering more emission reductions than what they were scheduled for. So that's helping to make up for other sectors that are lagging. Frankly, a lot of our focus is on the transportation sector for air quality and climate. That's why we have a number of subsidies for electric vehicles. And we're at about 13% of vehicles sold are electric. And it's one of the factors of why we need the stronger transit. I mean, it's not the only factor. It's about traffic and convenience, but it's also about air quality and climate.
Yeah, just to follow up, because you mentioned the NOx, and we have a 25 commitment, and we're ahead of that.
25 and 30.
We're ahead of that.
You're going to hit the 25.
The
yeah.
2030, as we were talking earlier, like how can we
That's a
help?
little
What
more
can we do? It's it's nice that the legislatures believe we can get there. It's going to take a massive amount of technology to figure it out. Like, we don't necessarily know the technology needed. So I'm going to go back to that previous. How can we have those conversations where we can have a more practical approach to how we're going to get there in case we can't achieve technically where we want to get by 2030? How can we work together? Because you kind of put the burden back on us, but it takes both. So how can we do that? What can we do differently to truly be a partner in those conversations and a practical approach?
Well, as you indicated, I think the industry either already has or certainly will reach ahead of schedule the 25 goals, and so sharing that and broadcasting that will be important. We are, you can say, that the industry is beating the timeline for that and meeting the goals. They are, as I indicated, on overall emissions as well, and I think generally speaking, the developments that are occurring over the next few years is closer to full electrification of the drilling process. Obviously, to the extent that there's pipeline instead of trucks, that helps a lot. If there are trucks, perhaps a transition to electric. And I think we've all but eliminated flaring, essentially, in our state. So these are important areas that we're continuing to work on with the oil and gas industry.
And, I was going to ask the governor, because he mentioned civility, or our panel did mention civility, so I was going to ask the governor about a certain Democratic legislator from Denver, but we are out of time. So, to our panelists, thank you again for being here. Governor, thank you. I want to hand it over to Debbie.
Thank you. I just want to say, in a time where there isn't much civility, I would say when we turn on the news and what's happening in our political climate, can we give all these folks a round of applause again for joining in? These are tough issues, and we want to work together on making some real progress and some solutions for that. So we're all excited that we're here today. Thanks again. This concludes our time together. Thank you. Thank you.